Hello, my name is Ashton Goebel. I am a second year student in the BMC program at the University of Toronto, and today I'm going to be showing you how to use a workflow in Maya, Character Animator, and then After Effects or your compositing software of choice to create something like this. This is specific to my MRP, but using essentially 2D projection onto a 3D object.
Dilation is how you maintain the depth and width of your vagina after surgery.
So, like I said, specific to
Dilation,
my MRP, my master's research project, but having 2D facial animations on a 3D object. Now we're in Maya, and you can see that I have my character set up. The way that I have this sculpted is I have a little bit of definition on the eyes. I've sculpted in the nose. I'm going to be using a toon shader for this. So I don't need it to be 100% perfect. And then I just have sort of a flat surface for the mouth. And then everything else I've sculpted in. You can see she's got some clothes and any accessories and things like that. So once you have your sculpt all ready, you are going to go into the UV editor and you're going to want to create UV. So I already have this set up here. Of course, this is for all of this. So I just want her body. But you can see here that we've got the UV map for her face, pretty front and center. I want to make sure it's within the 1-to-1 bounds of this box. But what I would suggest is selecting the faces of the face. And then using the camera, so create camera-based for the face specifically. And then everything else I would just select and do automatic, and then you can scale everything down. For all of this, at least in my case, it's just going to be a solid color, so it doesn't really matter what size it is as long as everything is represented within this UV map. But once you have your UV map and you're happy with it, you're going to go into image and then do a UV snapshot. So I already have this saved, but make sure that you figure out where you're going to do it. I would recommend for something like the face, you want to make sure that you have enough pixels represented. So I have it on a 2048 by 2048 square. If you're needing to zoom in closer to the face, you might want to increase that number, but for me, I'm keeping it pretty much at this level of detail, so it doesn't need to be anything crazy. So yeah, that's basically all you need to do. So you save it, apply and close, and then we will open this up in Photoshop. Okay, so next we're going to open up Adobe Character Animator. It looks like this guy right here, the little CH. So when you open up Character Animator, it's going to look like this. You have a bunch of sample puppets that you can play with. So I'm just going to click on one as an example. So these are puppets that you can manipulate and drag around. They've got a lot of different behaviors that you can mess with. They're pretty primitive. If you're needing just very, very simple character animations, then this is great. But the way that I am going to be using this is for the facial animation. So you can see in this corner over here, you've got, and this is me, hi. You've got this little webcam and it can record your body movements and your facial movements. So I don't know why she's moving like that. It should be turned off. But it also pays attention to your voice. So in my case, I have a lot of spoken dialogue, and so having to rig or animate each individual mouth movement would be very difficult and time consuming, but Character Animator does take care of this pretty efficiently. And I will show you in a moment how to configure your puppets for that. But you can see as I'm speaking, I'll calibrate to make sure it's all good. But as I'm speaking, this character is also speaking. And you can record your voice, or it can interpret your audio and animate according to either your mouth movements or the audio that you have. So I'm just going to turn this off because I don't want it on right now. So I have that set up here. There we go. So this is a little bit creepy. I'll actually turn this back on. So the way that I have my puppet set up, you can see I have the UV map here. It's actually the wrong one. It's supposed to have everything else, but the position of the face is the same, so it's fine. But you can see that as I'm blinking, my character is blinking, and as I'm speaking, my mouth movements are more or less corresponding to her mouth movements. So let's go into Photoshop and look at how I have this set up. Let's just minimize this guy. So here in Photoshop, you can see I've got the UV map, or this is an old one, but this is an old UV map. I didn't have it with everything else, but it's fine. All the body parts are just in this area anyway. But the way that Character Animator interprets files is you'll have your UV map, but you have basically parents with different components. So you have the head, you have the mouth underneath the head, as a child of the head, and you have different different mouth movements based on the viseme. So you have neutral, you have a smile, you have surprised, which I have as sort of a grimace. Character Animator, to my knowledge, these are the three expressions that it will recognize based on words, but I am going to be messing around with this so that I can just, instead of using my mouth or my facial expressions, this will be a different trigger or behavior later on. But then you have each of the visemes. Visemes are just the shapes that your mouth makes according to different phonemes. All of those are under the head parent, and then you have, I believe, eyebrows also. Yeah, everything is under this head parent here. Then you have each of the eyebrows separate. You have each of the eyes. So yeah, the way I'm going to hide the face so that we can see this eye set up here. But I have like the eyeball. So this is layered here. Okay, so yeah, you can see I've got like the eyeball, and then you add the people on separately, and then I have the eyelids. Oops. So I have the bottom eyelid and then the top eyelid with the eyelashes. And so this will enable me to create different levels of eye, like squinting, and when I smile, this lower eyelid can raise up to create a more natural smile feel. And we'll get to that later. And then of course we've got, sorry if this is creepy, the blink. So when you turn this back on, it looks like she's winking or blinking with both of them turned on. So it's a fairly simple setup. It's nothing too complex. I think honestly what takes the most time is just creating all the visemes. And then I've just got this flat color for the face. Like I said, oops, still got the blink on. Like I said, the rest of her body is just going to be a continuous color, so it doesn't need to be any more complex than that. But you can add things like blush, or if you want to go crazy and add like tattoos to your character, you definitely can do that in this Photoshop file. And if you're doing a larger character, like you can definitely do something similar to this. Adobe Character Animator has like their app guide, and they have the naming conventions for all of this. So once you have all this ready to go, you can export this or save it as a PSD file. You can also do this in Illustrator if you want to create your facial elements or your facial features that way. That's definitely doable, but I'm using Photoshop here. So I already have this exported and set up in Character Animator. To import it, you're just going to go to File, Import, and then you'll pick your PSD, this artwork here. So we are in Copy here. We're going to go into the Rig tab. So I will say the UI UX for Character Animator is a little rough, especially if you're used to something like After Effects. It's not as advanced, but it works. For what it is, it works. So you can see here, so we have this little crown icon, and you can see here that this means that the layer is independent of its parent group. So the head is independent. It is the main parent group, so that makes sense. The mouth, however, we don't want to be independent. We want it to have a static position on the face. Obviously, if you want it to move around, then go right ahead. But for my case, we want it to be pretty static. Well, things like the eyebrows, you do want to be independent because you want them to move, to have some movement. The eyes are interesting because in general, you don't really want your eyes to be moving around your face, but the pupil you do want to move. You also want your eyelids to move. So we're gonna have those turned on. The blink doesn't need to move. So we're just gonna repeat that for the left eye. We want the eyelids to move and the pupil to move, but not the eyeball. And then I believe everything else is good there. So actually, I lied. We do want the mouth turned on. I just looked back at my old one. Okay, so the next thing you're going to want to do is, you can see here that because we use the naming conventions suggested by Character Animator, we have these things automatically assigned here. So we have the mouth is coordinated to the mouth. The right eyebrow is not coordinated here. So we're going to, first of all, we're going to move, hello. Select the origin, and we're going to move it to the center, to sort of like our fulcrum point of the eyebrow. We want it to move up and down and rotate, so this is kind of the point of rotation. And then we're going to click on this plus sign here, go to the face, and we are going to select right eyebrow. Sometimes it automatically assigns these things, sometimes it doesn't. So then we're going to go left eyebrow, click on the origin, move it over here, and then add it here. And so now we've got these things assigned. Oh, hello. Sorry. Similarly, we're going to go to the right eye. I think here, eyebrow we want here. Head, we're going to move to the center of the face. Just going to move that to the center of the face. Left eyebrow is going to be there. Perfect. Then right eye, make sure I have this correct. Right eye, we're just going to move to the center here. It's already here. Right blink is an independent feature. All of the things that have the crowns here are going to, so similarly here. Right eyelid, we're just going to move it to the center-ish of where we want the movement to be. Right eyelid bottom. Going to go here. And I forgot I need to be adding their position. So this is right, this is the eyelid here. I'm just going to go in and add all of these. Right eyelid bottom, doesn't take a lot of time, but we're going to move this to the center here and add this as, not the right eye, pupil. I'm pretty sure we did already add that. Good. And then layer, I have no idea what layer 31 is. And then similarly, go in, add this with left eye, left blink, left eyelid top, same situation, eyelid top, eyelid bottom, pupil, to the best of your abilities, add these, and then the face is in the background here. So at this point, since we have everything positioned correctly, I am just going to turn off the UV map because it's not necessarily, and it's not necessary, and we won't be adding it in. We won't be exporting it. So now that we're here, we have it all pretty well figured out, and then we are going to, with the selected, create a new scene for the selected items. So when you first create this, it's going to be creepy, just as a disclaimer. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to resize our scene. First thing we're going to do is we're going to turn off the webcam because it's creepy as heck. So now, If you double click on the scene, it'll go into the record tab. So what we're going to do first is with the scene selected, we're going to go over here to the properties, make sure that everything's good here, but we're going to change the width and height to match our PNG, to match our PNG. So everything is squared and perfect and matched up. So now we can select our puppet here. Oh, here, just our behaviors. So for this, once you turn it on, you can see that this is just very wrong. It's moving a lot. You don't want the head to be moving. Like, all of this stuff is just incorrect. Well, but when you turn off the camera, everything feels pretty okay. Like, it's just in its original position. So the dragger is what you can do to move everything around. So we're just gonna turn off the dragger. Eye gaze as well is what allows the pupils to move. I've had some trouble messing with this original eye gaze, so I'm also just going to turn that one off. The face we do want to mess with. So the face we want to, yes, have the camera input on, but we are going to turn off a few of these elements, or turn down a couple of these elements. So you see here, I have the camera on, it's moving around. So smoothing is fine. Head position strength, we're going to turn this to 0, I believe. Yeah. Head position strength, we're going to turn it to 0. Head scale strength as well, 0. We don't need that to be moving. And then head tilt strength, once again, turn it to 0. We don't want the head to be moving with our head movements. So now that's pretty good. So eyebrow strength, you can have this on. You can tell on mine it's kind of funky still, like it's not really moving the eyebrows correctly. I'm going to turn it down to 0. And then we are going to edit the eyebrows later. We're going to add some different behaviors to make the eyebrows keyframeable so that you have more control. If you want, you can play around with it. If it's working for you, then the eyebrow strength is certainly something, and the eyebrow features in this, certainly something you can mess with. I'm going to turn the eyelid strength down to like 5%. I do want these to pay attention to the camera, but you can see here it's subtle, but not overwhelming. And you can adjust that to your liking as you want. Mouth strength, not really important here. Parallax strength doesn't really matter. Here, like I said, we're going to be messing with the eyebrows later. Move the eyebrows together, and then yeah, is there anything here? Oh yeah, and then blink the eyes together. So really and truly, I keep this on for the sake of having slight eyelid movements and having the eyes blink. You can also do a random blink behavior, or like automatic blink behavior. I find this is a bit more natural, but it works. Next, we have the lip sync, which we want to have on. Physics is essentially if you have elements like hair, it'll pay attention to how the hair is moving and do that. We don't have any of that there. We're not going to worry about it. Then we have transform, which is the general transform for this whole thing. So if I want to move it over, we can move things over, but we just want it at 0. Scale, opacity, all those good things. I'm just going to close it. We're not messing with that. And then we have triggers. So triggers, trigger behaviors. And you can assign certain keystroke to direct these behaviors. Most of these are for making things appear and reappear, but you can assign it to, like, when you click B, your character will blink. I don't have any used here, but certainly something worth exploring later on. So these are all the behaviors that are by default assigned to a puppet. We are going to assign a couple of additional behaviors to further customize this puppet. So before we add any keyframes or adjust the behaviors of our puppet, we're going to add in our audio. Now you can do this a couple of different ways. You can just record yourself right here and it will interpret the audio and your mouth movements to create a recording. It's essentially like you're just recording yourself on the video, but it's interpreting whatever inputs that you have from the camera and the audio and transferring it to your puppet, which is really cool. The other thing that you can do is you can import your own audio that's pre-recorded, and it will interpret based on the sounds that it's hearing what mouth movements need to happen. So that's what I'm going to do here. The way that you're going to do that is you just file, import, and then you choose your footage. So we'll go with that one. I already have it uploaded in here. And so you just drag it into your scene. So this is the audio that I have for my entire narration. You don't need that much. It's a lot. So you can cut it down to the size that you need, the little snippet that you're going to be working with. And then the other thing that you can do to help it, the algorithm figure out what the words are, is you can add a transcript. So for the short bit that I have in my other scene, this is the text. So it just helps it give a little bit more information so that it knows what to say or what the mouth movements should look like. So going back into our completed scene where I have everything set up nicely. So now on this one, you can see I've inputted my scratch narration here. That's a lot shorter. It's got the transcript with it, so that's going to help it out a lot. And it's interpreted the mouth movements that need to happen in this lip sync area down here. And so all this green, so from the audio input. And then you can see down here, I'm going to increase the size. You can see here that it has added visemes. So you can see here that you can move these things around. So you make it longer. If you want it to start earlier, you can change what viseme it is. So if you right click on it, it'll show you like the different options that you have. You can choose silence if you want it to basically just go away. But it also shows you, like, for each viseme, there are mouth movements that are the same. So the cool thing about this is you can go in and change these or adjust it. If there are some things that it's interpreting weird, you can adjust it, but it's so much faster than having to hand animate or draw out every single mouth movement. So now I'm moving into the scene that I already have set up that has our audio. So if you play it.
Dilation is how you maintain the depth and width of your vagina after surgery. Without dilation, the lining of the vaginal canal tends to shrink. Dilation.
So you can see here that we've got some eyebrow movements. Some eyebrow movements, some eyelid movements that are keyframed. And additionally, we have the mouth that is moving according to the audio. So let's add some behaviors. So go back into your rig tab. I have it set up here. You can see that you have these little blocks here with little cogs. And this is how you can add behaviors to certain elements. So for the right eyebrow, you can add any of these behaviors. Well, most of these I would say are not really usable for this purpose. But what we are going to add here is a transform behavior. I already have it here. So when we go back into our recording, you can see that there is a transform. This is the OG transform. There is a transform for the left eyelid, the left bottom eyelid, and the left eyebrow, well, and each of the eyebrows. Unfortunately, I don't think you can rename these, which is a bit frustrating. Like I said, the UI is not great, but you have transforms, and you can keyframe them. If you're familiar with After Effects, keyframing is great. So this allows you to manually alter these features. Same thing with the eyelids. I've added a behavior for each of the eyelids, a transform behavior, auto blink. The other behavior that I am going to use is the eye gaze. So I have an eye gaze set up for the right pupil and the left pupil. So the other thing that you can do with these behaviors is you can add control. So this is for the right eyebrow. I just have it named here. You can rename the controllers. Right eyebrow, position Y, right eyebrow, position X, and then the rotation of that eyebrow. Left eyebrow, same situation over here. And then down here, I don't know why there's such a big gap, but I've got the lower eyelid and well, I've got both of the lower eyelids. You can also add it for the upper eyelid. I don't think I added that here. But the way that you create controllers is, well, you have the characteristic that you're wanting to edit, click on here, and then you're going to add to controls panel. So say I want to adjust, for whatever reason, the scale X of my eyebrow. We're going to go here, we're going to add to the controls panel. So you have this, and you can see we're in the layout tab here. So this allows you to move things around. You can rename it. So this is going to be scale X for left eyelid. Probably should have done this for the eyebrow so it's easier to see. But you can go here, and we're still in the layout, but then you go into perform. You can see here that we've got scale X of this eyelid. Don't know why you'd want to do that. Reset the puppet setting, and we're just gonna go back to the layout setting and then delete this guy because we don't really care about him. But you can do that for each thing. So say you want to raise the eyebrow position, you can do that. You want to keep it fairly subtle though. Anyway, so now that you have these all set up, you can then make sure that everything's keyframed the way that you want and adjust it. Okay, quick change of scene. The last behavior that I used for this was the eye gaze behavior. So you can see that that is on the pupils. So when you go into the scene, I'm going to show it in the completed one. So for the eye gaze, I have it set to keyboard input as opposed to camera, mouse, or touch input. I've set the smoothing to about 52% and the keyboard shrink to 6%. So basically the smoothing is how smoothly the eyes move, and then the keyboard strength is how far the pupils move. So if I use, I'm just using the arrow keys to show these, so you can use up, down, left, and right. You can also use combinations of keys to make them look into the corners of the eyes, which is pretty cool. If you turn the smoothing down to like 0, it's going to be very snappy. You can see on the left pupil, it's snapping to each of those positions. If you turn it all the way up to 100, it's going to go pretty slowly. 98 is fine. They move very slowly. And so I found that like 52 is a good balance here. And then the keyboard shrink to 6%. If you turn this up, it will move it like way out of frame, which you don't want. So keep it at like 6%. And that way I can use the keyboard controls when you're recording, similarly with the mouth movements, the eyelid movements. You can also record the eye movements within that. In the example that I have, I don't really use the eye gaze function, but for your animation, you can for sure do that. Okay, so once you're happy with the animation, the mouth movements, all of that good stuff, and you're ready to export, all you're gonna do is make sure that you have your UV map turned off. If you have it turned on, then it's just going to export with that, and you don't want that on your final character. So make sure it's turned off, and then you're going to go into File. Well, make sure you have your correct scene selected. File, Export, and then you're going to do PNG, Sequence, and Wave. So let me save it to the correct place here. So I have this already saved, but we're going to do a new one. So we'll just do CA tutorial PNG seq, and we'll save it. So shouldn't take too long to export. It's like, I think 181 frames. It's pretty quick. Okay, so now we have this here, and you can see we've got all of these PNGs here, and they're different based on the different mouth movements. You also have this JSON file that you don't need to worry about, and then you also have your audio file, which will be important later. So now we're going to take this back into Maya. Okay, so now we are back in Maya, and we have our character here. I just have the texture turned off, so it's just this base shader. for this character, I am using a tune shader, so I already have that set up, but let's go into the hypershade and see what we've got. So like I said, we've got this tune shader. Here I just have my setup, how I want it. You want to make sure that for this, especially if you're doing a global skin tone from like your PNG sequence, if you have like the flat skin tone, you want to make sure that your base is white. Now here I'm using a layered textured node. You can use something like AI Mix Shader or Composite, but for me the layered textured node works really nicely. So we've got our layered textured node here for the out color. These are just for the tune shader. You're going to want to add an AI image. So, that's not it. So tab AI image, we're just going to start fresh. So we have this image node here. And then want to make sure that on this, before you add your file or after, select use file sequence. Well, and then we're going to select our PNG, just the start in the sequence, and then we can load it. So you can see here, we've got this lovely PNG sequence. So we're going to take out color from the image file, go into color here. So that's going to be our base color for this layered texture. You want to make sure that you have everything turned up and that you have the blend mode set to multiply. Then for your tune shader, we have it set at white. So for that input, we just have that set as color for input 1. So if we go back here, this is going to be our tune shader, and then blend mode none. And so if we go back here and go into our Arnold render, we can see now that she has a lovely face. You see all the positioning is correct. And if you move through the keyframes, you can see that her facial expressions will move. They're supposed to move. Back here. Hello. Using the file sequence. Okay, there we go. Okay, I don't know what happened there, but I just unselected and reselected the use file sequence. It should show up with the numbers here, or with the hashtags there. So if it's not working, just try and reselect that and it'll jumpstart it. So anyway, now we've got this and it should work out really nicely. If you play it through, it's probably not going to play out super nicely, but you can see her eyebrows are moving here. Her mouth is moving. Probably could use a bit more refinement, but for the purposes of this exercise, it's pretty good. When you're ready to export it, you can just go into the rendering tab, render sequence, make sure you have your render settings correct. I have it on render cam. Go to your render settings, make sure you have everything all good. Your filing conventions, your frame range correct here, render cam. I just have it on HD 720 right now for speed. And if you're using the tune shader, just a reminder, you can do this in render layers as well, but you want to make sure that you do contour and Gaussian. So yeah, from here you can render it out. So I don't know why that changed, but render cam, and then you can render out the sequence, frames 1 through 181. Then I'm going to take it into After Effects. Okay, so now in After Effects, ignore how messy this is. This is like my research and development purgatory situation, so it's a bit messy at the moment. But for compositing, it's fairly simple. I just created a new comp. That's 181, and then I realized whatever I threw in here was just the first half of the export to test it out. So I've got just a shape layer for the background. I've got my EXR sequence that I exported from Maya. So you can see here we've got the full animation going on. And then on top of that, I just have the audio file that came from Character Animator because it's specific to this length of frames. You can use whatever audio you want, but I find this to be really quite convenient. So now when you play it,
dilation is how you maintain the depth and width of your vagina after surgery.
It's really nice. And it's a fairly simple workflow. It's pretty easy to adjust if you need. Like, for instance, if I went into Maya and I realized, oh, her eye is like on her ear, like that's really wrong, I can take it back either into Photoshop and adjust it from there, do a test PNG frame to make sure that everything's positioned correctly, and then adjust it as needed. Or if her mouth is doing something funky, I can just go into Character Animator and fix it. So yeah, I hope this workflow was helpful and gives you some inspiration or guidance. I think it's definitely a speedier workflow than having to hand animate specifically the mouth movements. I think that would have otherwise been very time intensive. And so I think this is a pretty solid solution if you are a bit strapped for time, or you need just like a simple, more stylized solution to your facial animation. So thank you very much.